TheAngryHoneyBadger.
Hey everybody, it is TheAngryHoneyBadger here, and it's time for another champion build video. We're going to be taking a look at Zed today. Playing against a Cho'Gath in the mid lane, a little bit unfortunate. We'll talk about why. That's a little bit of an unfortunate matchup later on in the video. What we're going to cover though is, of course, his runes and masteries, his abilities, and the items themselves, along with a little bit when it comes to pros and cons, so we know what's good and what isn't good for Zed if you're looking to pick him and play him. So, to get things out of the way early, let's talk about runes and masteries. We'll do those first. So for runes, on your marks, you got two choices. You have armor penetration or attack damage. On your seals, you're either going to go with health or armor, depending on the lane matchup you're against, if you know what you're up against. And then for your glyphs, typically going to take magic resist, but cooldown reduction can work if you're against AD lanes. And then quintessences will be attack damage. Now for your masteries page, that is down in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. You can take a look at it right now. It's a 21 in the offense and 9 in the defense. Pause it if you want to see it longer. If not, runes and masteries videos are in the description for lots of champions. Check it out. So, with that out of the way, let's jump into his abilities, starting off with his passive. Now, his passive is Contempt for the Weak. Zed's basic attacks against targets below 50% health deal 6 to 10% of the target's maximum health as bonus magic damage. This effect can only occur once every 10 seconds on the same target, or else that would be incredibly overpowered because you would just annihilate people if you could do that often, over and over. So that is his passive. It's pretty good. It helps out later with your ultimate and more, but we'll get to that in a second. Let's go to his Q ability. This is what you will be maxing out first. This is your Razor Shuriken. So Razor Shuriken, when you throw shurikens, they're going to deal physical damage to the first enemy they pass through, and then it does a little bit less as it passes through further enemies. Living Shadow, additional shurikens striking the same target enemy will deal 50% less damage and will restore energy to Zed. This is your Q ability. We will be maxing this out first. You can use this to farm. You can use this to kill people. Overall, good ability and pretty good stuff. At your second level in the game, you're going to put a point into your Living Shadow. Now, your Living Shadow is your W ability. Now, Living Shadow will be great for you because Living Shadow, passively, you're going to get bonus attack damage that will be increased each time you put a point into this. So as the game continues, you're going to get stronger, or more attack damage at least, by maxing this out. But we maxed this out last, actually. And then when you activate this, you're going to send your shadow forward. It'll remain in place for 4 seconds. If you reactivate it, you will switch to that shadow's location. The shadow will mimic your abilities, your basic abilities, obviously not your ultimate. But your basic abilities, which is nice. If both strike the same target, Zed regains energy, which is also really good. Very nice. Remember that. So that is your Living Shadow. Pretty long cooldown, but a good escape. Then at level 3, put a point into your Shadow Slash. Shadow Slash, Zed, with his shadows, because they're fun, will slash around him. They will deal physical damage to nearby enemies. Slashes reduces the cooldown of Living Shadows by 1 second for each enemy hit. His Shadow Slash will also slow enemies, which is also good. Overlapping the shadows, striking the same enemy will add no additional damage, but it will give it an increased slow, and it will restore energy, so that's also good. And then as for your ultimate, this is your Death Mark. Now your Death Mark is fantastic and kind of the bread and butter of Zed. When you activate this, you will become untargetable and dash to the target champion's location. When you arrive, it will mark the target with the Death Mark, and you will spawn your Living Shadow at the start of wherever you started at Death Mark. You can reactivate it and jump back to that original position. It will last there for 6 seconds, so it's there longer than your Living Shadow. And then after 3 seconds, the mark will detonate, dealing all physical damage equal to 100% of Zed's basic attack damage, plus a percentage of the damage dealt of all magic and physical damage dealt to the target by Zed and his shadows while the mark was active. So, we do things with our build to get the most out of our Death Mark. And Death Mark's just a great ability. And the way you utilize Death Mark, or try to utilize Death Mark, is when you go to ult them, you want to make sure you then contribute damage to them while the mark is on them. That is the big thing. So while you ult, you'll typically slash right after you ult them. Make sure you get autos off in between, especially if they are below 50% health. You'll get even more damage with your passive. Obviously, chuck a couple shurikens at them. The other big thing to do after you do ult someone, and this will help you when you chase them as well, is you will want to use any actives you have that will deal damage, such as the Bilgewater that we have right now. It'll deal magic damage to them, and that's part of the damage that will be amplified up to when the death mark bursts. So it's very important when you death mark to not just mark them and then return to your shadow and run away. That's going to do honestly, 150 damage. It's not going to do hardly anything. Death marks that just are them death marking and running away, they hardly even do any damage. It's really down to how much damage you contribute after you do death mark them and you do the next damage in those 3 seconds. Very, very important on Zed. Kind of like the main thing to do. So, very important that we learn that. Let's talk about the build though, now that we are a few minutes in and we have some actual items. So, as when we started the game off, we started with a longsword and health pots. That's my favorite start because it gives us a little bit of damage. It does give us a handful of pots, so we can stay in lane in case we're getting poked down. And since Cho'Gath actually has a little bit of poke and AoE, it is helpful to have some of those pots. If you wanted to play even safer, boots and pots, you get a few more pots. That's safer, and you got some speed to help you get out of lane if you need to. When it comes to our first item that we really want to build in the game, at least on our first trips back, we pick up the Vampiric Scepter and build that into Bilgewater Cutlass, because that is just what we honestly really want. The Bilgewater Cutlass will have the active, very helpful. It has the lifesteal in lane, very good too, and it will build towards the Blade of the Ruined King, which once again, the active, very big for Zed, also will slow them down and will deal extra damage to them when he has used his death mark on them. So the Blade of the Ruined King is a great item. Also, with the attack speed it does grant, Zed is one of the split pushers in the game that will, after the laning phase is really over, pick a lane and go split push it, because he should be able to pretty much duel most people 1v1 as long as your ultimate is up. He also will push faster with having a little bit of attack speed. He's got good clear anyways, but that all helps, and it'll help him take towers quicker too while he is split pushing. So Blade, really good item. But before we finished off our Blade fully, we went back and picked up more long swords, and we picked up a Brutalizer. I like the Brutalizer fairly early to just have that piece of it, because it does give us good attack damage with 25. It does give us some cooldown reduction and some armor penetration. He's a champion that likes to benefit from a lot of armor penetration. So we'll have an armor penetration heavy build. Very, very good. He'll just crush straight through people when he does death mark them, and so on. So we'll talk about it in a second. So we built just the Brutalizer for now. Now, when it came to our boots, we obviously did pick up the first part earlier, just for some mobility. Then, depending on the lane you're typically up against, you're going to want to build either Merc Treads if you're up against AP laners and if they have a lot of crowd control. And with the meta being currently tanky-ish, probably pretty important to have these. If you're going up against an AD heavy team, you're going up against like a Jace in lane, maybe a Yasuo, the Ninja Tabbies are going to be very helpful. You'll probably want those. And then if you want to go with another boot option, this one is available. If you want to roam a lot and contribute that way, Boots of Mobility will be great for getting around the map and surprising lanes. Champions that run Boots of Mobility will typically get to other lanes so fast that it surprises the enemy team. And Mia's may not have been called or pinged out on the map fast enough by the time you show up and death mark someone under their turret. So just remember that. That's also an option. Now, the boots we went with were Mercs, because they have some crowd control. We were up against a Cho. A little bit of match resist helped. When it comes to the next item we're building, though, we've started to pick up a pickaxe and another longsword. We're actually going to build towards the last Whisper fairly quick. Some people might think this is too quick, but this just really guarantees us that all of our damage is really going to be landing on them. It gives us 40 attack damage and that 35% armor penetration. It's also not the world's most expensive item, which is also kind of nice. While we did start building this item, though, we did pick up the Avarice Blade. We're making some gold off of that right now because the Avarice Blade will team up with our Brutalizer after we've just finished our last Whisper just now, and we'll build that into a Youmuu's Ghostblade. We're gonna get jumped on by Rango Tango. We're gonna do a lot of damage to him, and one random Q from Kennen takes it, but it's fine. It's as long as they die, it's all good, but he would have been annihilated as well. Anyways, so Youmuu's Ghostblade is the next item we're gonna be building towards, or we'll finish up the next time we head back to base. Once again, an item that doesn't give us tons of damage, but a okay amount. It does also, you know, have that cooldown reduction on it. Always a good thing. Critical strike chance. If you get some crits off while you are standard attacking them, this is good, but it's not like we're focused around crit. But the nice thing we do like about this, besides the armor penetration on it as well, is the unique active where you gain 20% movement speed and 40% attack speed for 6 seconds. And it's on a short cooldown, which is nice. So when you do ult them and you need to chase them, you get the more movement speed, you get the more attack speed, or you can just use it to use as like a little mini ghost if you need to run away for a second. or you can use it on towers if you just want the attack speed to burn through a tower while you're split pushing. So there's a lot of options that you have with Ghostblade, and like I said, it's the combination of after you deathmark, you can use your Blade of the Ruined King, slow them, attack them. They're still getting out of your range. This is a Vayne I'm up against who does already have a QSS, unfortunately, but you could also then use Ghostblade's active to then close the distance even more, get on them, and really annihilate the target that you're focusing, because Zed's really going to be diving onto the backline to kill targets that are high priority if he can. So that's what we're doing. We'll jump to the next item because we're going to jump to pros and cons after that. We have a BF sword, really getting some good damage from that. We will build it into the Bloodthirster. I like Bloodthirster over Hydra in Zed's case because the Bloodthirster, I like the shield on it personally, and a lot of raw damage. Obviously, Ravenous Hydra has good raw damage too, and it does have lifesteal and AoE to clear and push. I typically really do like Hydra. People probably know that. I usually like it a little bit more than Bloodthirster, but for Zed, definitely the Bloodthirster. So that's what we're building next. So let's jump to pros and cons. So when I talked about diving the backline and killing high priority targets, the cons to Zed, we'll get to pros in a second. There's lots of pros. There's not as many cons, but the cons are big ones. So the cons are once somebody buys a QSS, that is really unfortunate for Zed because they can cleanse the damage that the Deathmark will do. And that is really unfortunate, and that really shuts off Zed, or one of the big things that shuts off Zed. So once that happens, you either just need to annihilate them with the raw damage that you have, which we will do right before the end of this video on Vayne. So it's coming in like a minute and a half. So but you can't rely on the Deathmark, they can cleanse it. So that's really unfortunate, that shuts off Zed. The other big thing that shuts off Zed, which when I said was unfortunate we were up against a Cho'Gath this game, was because tanky characters, the Deathmark typically doesn't do quite enough. Not saying Zed can't fight them, but there's not a prime target for him to go towards. He doesn't usually want to ult just a straight tank and try to go ham on a tank, let alone as a tank. You don't really want to focus a tank anyways. That's just not the smartest plan. So, that's another big con. And now with the tank meta currently in play, everybody being pretty tanky currently, it's really unfortunate. So what happens is after the enemy ADC picks up a QSS and they're unkillable, or it's hard to kill them, you usually have to start focusing on a support. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing because that's most of the ADC's peel, but it's not the most beneficial target. So, or obviously AP mids, if you're up against them, you'll want to take them out too. So, just an option. So, those are some of the biggest cons to Zed, for sure. So, be weary of those. So, here's that moment where we find her. We slow her down. Deathmark. We used the active as well. She just pops and she dies. So, as long as you can kill them quick, that's very, very good. Game's gonna end soon. Pros, high skill cap. If you wanna get really, really good with Zed, you will continue to carry games. You can go as high as this guy. He's probably got the highest skill cap in the game, or one of the highest skill caps in the game. Other pros, he can be versatile for a lot of teams because he brings the split push and he'll always have damage all game long. Obviously, if you fall behind and don't have damage, then you're just not gonna do it. But he doesn't really have a weak and a strong point. He's pretty consistent throughout the whole game, so very, very good there. So just remember that. Good champion to play. He's got an escape as well as a gap close. So other things to consider when playing as Zed. So he can get into fights, he can get out of fights, and he'll always do consistent damage. And if you want to get really good with him, like I said, sky is the limit. We're going to finish out the game here. It will end. And as for that final item we were building, that was going to be the Guardian Angel. Everything you need to know about the build is in the description, and I'll see all of you in the next build video.